There are battles that decide kings, and there are battles that decide empires. But once in 1,000 years, a different kind of battle appears. One that decides the direction of an entire civilization. Tours, 732. The day momentum died, a storm rode north. A force that had already conquered half of the known world. Kingdoms collapsed, cities burned. Resistance failed, again and again. Speed had become a habit. Victory felt inevitable. And yet, at the very edge of Europe, one army stood in the way. Outnumbered, outmatched, but silent. Still, unbroken. Their leader was no crowned king, no emperor raised by blood or ceremony, only a man known as the Hammer. What followed echoed for centuries, not because it was miraculous, but because it exposed a colder truth. That speed does not always defeat discipline. That cavalry does not always defeat ground, and that an army shaped by motion can break when it is forced to stand still. This wasn't decided by a heroic charge, not by a duel, not by legend. The turning point began behind the line, in a camp, among supplies, spoils, and a single rumor that spread faster than any horse. If you want to understand how an empire's momentum breaks, watch closely to understand why that rumor mattered. You have to understand the storm that carried it. In the early 8th century, the Umayyad Caliphate was not merely expanding, it was accelerating. Within a single generation, armies surged out of Arabia, swept across North Africa, and shattered the Visigothic kingdom of Iberia in 711. Cities fell with astonishing speed. Resistance collapsed before it could organize. Repeated victory creates a dangerous illusion that the next step will always be easier than the last. Momentum became a habit. Speed became doctrine. War for the Umayyads felt like motion without resistance. Victory, repeated often enough, becomes an addiction. North of Iberia lay Gaul, not a nation, not a unified kingdom, but a fractured land of dukes, counts, and temporary alliances. Aquitaine stood first in the path, and Aquitaine broke. Bordeaux fell. The countryside emptied. Storehouses, estates, and churches were stripped bare. What began as a raid now carried the weight of momentum. Aquitaine was not just a target, it was a buffer. Beyond it stood Tours, not merely a town, but a symbol of wealth, learning, and stability. Its fall would have sent a message far beyond its walls. When symbols are targeted, war stops being a raid. Yet Europe at this moment was fragile and divided. There was no France as we know it, no centralized authority to command a united defense. Power rested instead with men who could organize force and keep it together. One of those men was Charles Martel. He was not a king, not crowned by ceremony or bloodline, but as mayor of the palace, he controlled the Frankish army. And, in practice, the fate of the realm. Our understanding of this battle comes from imperfect voices, Frankish sources, the continuations of Fredegar, the Annales Metensis, were written close to power and memory and speak confidently of Martel's role. Later, Arabic traditions remember the field as Balat al-Shuhada, the Road of the Martyrs, often recorded generations after the event. Numbers differ. Intentions are debated. So we focus not on numbers, but on outcomes that both sides recorded. Legend makes battles beautiful. truth makes them dangerous. Martel did not prepare to win with speed. He prepared to deny it. He built power slowly, through organization, discipline, and time. And when his enemy arrived, expecting motion, he forced them to stand still. By the time both armies settled into position, two different ideas of war were already colliding. For the Umayyads, war meant movement, speed. Cavalry striking fast, breaking resistance, then flowing forward again. It was a system built on acceleration. For the Franks, war meant refusal, holding ground, endurance, a continuous line that did not give way. At Tours, movement was broken by stillness. Not by bravery, but by placement. When your enemy expects movement, stillness becomes a weapon. The Umayyad army arrived with real advantages. Experienced horsemen, campaign veterans hardened by years of rapid conquest, a doctrine proven across deserts and plains. But those advantages carried a cost. They were far from their base. Autumn was turning cold. Supply lines stretched south through hostile territory, and behind the front sat the camp, heavy with loot, provisions, and the army's route home. Loot ties an army to its rear, and anything tied can be pulled. The longer the standoff lasted, the more sensitive that rear became. The Franks prepared differently. Martel's force was built as a system, not a collection of heroes. Shields locked edge to edge, ranks deep. Men trained to replace the fallen without opening gaps. This was the hidden machine of Tours. Impact absorbed, pressure distributed. The line bent and closed again. Terrain completed the design. The battlefield offered elevation, uneven ground, and scattered trees. Space narrowed. Acceleration died. Terrain doesn't kill cavalry. It breaks their vector. Force depends on speed. Speed depends on space. Remove space, and power evaporates. When horses cannot accelerate, the cavalry becomes infantry caught in a trap, and yet neither side attacked. Scouts moved cautiously. Information was partial. Signals were unclear. Both armies measured rhythm instead of charging, probing, waiting. In that fog of uncertainty, a single rumor could outweigh 1,000 orders. And somewhere behind the Umayyad lines, that rumor was already forming. The waiting ended not with a trumpet, but with pressure. Before the main lines touched, small encounters flared along the edges. Scouts collided in the trees. Messengers returned with fragments. Movement here, silence there. No one saw the whole field. Each man knew only the few steps in front of him. In a pre-modern war, victory is not announced. It is discovered when the enemy is gone. As morning wore on, hesitation became risk. Supplies tightened. Horses need forage. And behind the Umayyad front, the camp loomed heavy with loot and provisions. Momentum demanded release. The cavalry advanced. Dust lifted. Hooves thundered. Steel flashed as riders surged toward the Frankish line, expecting space, expecting yield. They found neither. The slope slowed them. Trees broke alignment. Acceleration collapsed into compression. Cavalry did not fail at Tours. It was forced to fight under conditions it was never designed for. Shields locked, spears angled. The Frankish line absorbed the impact. The charge failed not from lack of courage, but from a lack of space. Riders pulled back, reformed, advanced again. Each attempt added disorder. Fallen horses became obstacles. gaps formed and closed. This was the machine. The Frankish line bent under pressure, then sealed itself shut. Men stepped forward to replace the fallen. Broken shields vanished into the mass. Time did what force could not. For the Umayyads, the problem compounded. Compressed formations lost direction. Momentum bled away with every minute. If a line survives the first hour, it will not break the same way again. Then the rear began to pull. A rumor moved faster than orders. The camp was threatened. Loot was at risk. The road south was no longer secure. Each rider passed a different version. Each version widened the fear. A rumor does not need to be true to be decisive. Small groups peeled away. Horses turned back. The front thinned. Charles Martel saw the shift. The slowed rhythm, the opening seams. He did not order pursuit. He ordered pressure. The Frankish line stepped forward as one, not in charge, but in a deliberate crush. At the center, Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi rode into the chaos, trying to restore control. How he fell is uncertain. A spear, an axe, a blow lost in the crush. What is certain is that he died. And with him, command collapsed. Retreat replaced hesitation. Hesitation became flight. By nightfall, the Umayyad army withdrew under darkness. The Franks did not pursue blindly. They held formation. They held the field. Empires rarely fall from a shortage of men, but from the loss of command at the wrong moment. At Tours, the storm did not explode. It stalled and tore itself apart. When daylight returned to the field near Tours, nothing dramatic followed. The Franks still held their ground. Formations intact. Men exhausted, wounded, alive. The Umayyad army had withdrawn south under darkness, breaking contact, abandoning the attempt to push deeper into Gaul. The shock of Tours was not social. It was strategic. No noble class was wiped out in a single afternoon. No ruling elite collapsed overnight. What ended instead was momentum. The frontier did not fall. The rhythm of expansion broke. Sometimes the greatest victory is forcing the enemy to turn back. The numbers remain uncertain. Medieval sources exaggerate. Later chroniclers inflate armies and casualties beyond reliability. Modern estimates vary widely. What is uncertain are the numbers. What is certain is the withdrawal and the loss of command. Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi did not survive the battle. With his death, coordinated operations ceased. In the months that followed, Umayyad forces continued limited raids along the frontier. But the scale changed. The ambition changed. There would be no second advance like this one. Tours did not end the conflict. It ended the assumption that pressure alone would carry the war forward. And in war, assumptions are often more fragile than armies. In the centuries that followed, Tours were turned into legend. So let us strip it back to what the evidence actually supports. First, there is no firm proof that the Umayyad army intended to conquer all of Europe. Second, there is strong evidence that a sustained strategic advance into Gaul was stopped. And third, Tours were not a miracle. It was a victory of discipline, terrain, timing, not divine intervention. Truth is colder than legend, but far more useful. Politically, the consequences unfolded slowly. Charles Martel did not take a crown. But control of the army became control of the future. From that control emerged the Carolingian order. And, one generation later, Charlemagne. Militarily, Tours leaves 4 lessons that echo far beyond the 8th century. Terrain defeats momentum. Discipline defeats shock. Logistics creates vulnerability. And fog of war turns rumor into a weapon. These are not medieval curiosities. They are constants. The same logic will surface again. At Constantinople, at Morgarten, at Bannockburn, at Courtrai. So here is the question for you. Which battle, in your view, most clearly broke an empire's momentum? And if you were the commander, would you choose speed or discipline? If you want more battles where systems defeat instinct, like the video, leave your thoughts below and subscribe. From Tours to Constantinople to the killing fields of medieval Europe.